For weeks, Russia has boasted of its great victory in Kupiansk, one of Ukraine's fortress cities within Kharkiv Oblast, the oft-forgotten front northwest of the more salient Donbas region. No doubt, as ceasefire negotiations continue, this was intended to influence expectations of the war's eventual outcome. Russia will inevitably capture everything that it wants, so there is no point in resisting. One problem: Russia had not quite captured Kupiansk. Actually, it seems that Ukraine has pushed Russia to the north of the city. And in case anyone was not sure, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky paid a visit to Kupiansk, with audible explosions around him, and well within the range of quadcopters. But how Ukraine got into this position and then bounced back tells us something much deeper about the broader war. So, today, let's see how Ukraine retook Kupiansk. I will get to the territorial progression in a few minutes, but to understand what exactly happened here, we first need to discuss the evolution in military technology over the course of this war. At the start, rain was the enemy of the offense. Part of why Russia's initial invasion plan failed was because Ukraine never quite froze over during the winter of 2022. You see, the traditional hierarchy of offensive convenience under precipitation is dry, then frozen, then wet. When the ground is frozen, tanks can drive over without much difficulty. There are logistical problems to be sure with the winter, but the offense can at least work. Try doing the same thing in the rain, though, and your tanks will get stuck in the mud. That happened all over Ukraine in February and March 2022, slowing Russia's offensive, and turning the special military operation into a years-long war. The same logic surfaced in the fall of 2022 as well. Ukraine was in the middle of its astonishing counteroffensive when the rain started to come down. That ended Ukraine's progress at the city of Kherson, and transitioned us into the more attritional war that we have witnessed ever since. The years since have shifted military operations away from traditional mechanized battles to our brave new drone world. With that in mind, let's take a look at the territorial exchanges from the last few months. Things had not been looking great for Ukraine during the summer dry season. There was hope that the rain and then winter would slow down Russia, give Ukraine further time to enhance its defenses, and then allow for the line to be more locked in thereafter. This at least had been the case to varying degrees in the past years. But November refused to cooperate. Another 639 square kilometers lost, even more than July's total. What's going on here? Well, again, it is drones. What is no longer driving seasonal trends is a mechanized brigade's ability to move their wheels and treads across the ground. The expensive chunks of metal are just too easy to see from the air and destroy. This is true even when the weather is relatively hostile to drones, which we will discuss again in a moment. Instead, in any season, the standard method of advance is for individual soldiers to make meter-by-meter progress while trying to avoid detection from drones. Now, winter, aside from precipitation, still slows things down here. When trees lose their foliage, there are fewer places to hide. In addition, soldiers have to stay warm, which limits how far they can drift away from reinforced positions. Never mind that heat signatures can reveal their movement. This also limits the ability for defenders to hide, of course, but the net advantage falls to the defense. That said, the key weather question is whether the weather allows for drone operations. Here, the effect of rain flips from what has historically been true. Drones hate the rain. The water can short electronic circuits, it interferes with the drone's aerodynamics, it adds weight and drag, and it generally frustrates the operator's flight experience. Thus, rain limits drone operations, giving infantry greater freedom of movement. And that is allowing Russia, with its deep roster of contract soldiers, to keep pushing forward. Add fog and high winds to the mix, and you get a perfect storm for advances. And that is why we are seeing these numbers. Kupiansk is a bit different, though. The last time that Russia made serious, confirmed progress there was all the way back in the middle of September, coming out of the north to cut south toward the city. To add some more detail, the Oskol River runs through here. Ukraine has used the river as a line of control for a substantial portion of the northern front. Russian soldiers had tried occupying the area east of the river, but they were failing to make progress there. So instead, they crossed over the river and then turned south to Kupiansk. In the Kremlin's framing, the operation has been an unqualified success. In this December 2nd press conference, Putin described Kupiansk as having been effectively under Russian control for several weeks, completely and in its entirety. However, for the 3 months following the river crossing, trackers have tended to mark the area around the city as contested, a gray zone. This is common for the modern battlefield. We do not get nice trench lines that are easily measured. We instead get a battlefield soup, where small groups may form enclaves around one another without anyone there knowing, much less anyone at home sitting on their couch. Regardless, geographically speaking, this is what Russia has been doing up and down the front. Push out in a particular area, create a cauldron in connection with another segment of the battlefield, exploit the flanking position to slowly fill it in, then wash, rinse, and repeat elsewhere. There is one serious problem with this strategy, though. If you attempt to flank this large cauldron, then the salient that you push out of is itself exposed to enemy flanking. That danger doubles when you voluntarily cross a river to initiate the original salient. The reason that Russia has gotten away with this so many times is because Ukraine does not have enough spare men to exploit the vulnerability. The standard way to combat such a strategy is to have a mobile secondary, usually made up of more elite troops, who can travel to the areas in the greatest need. Think of them as firefighters. They are not frontline fighters. Rather, they sit on the sidelines, waiting for a fire to break out, and then they go put it out. We already know that Ukraine's firefighting units are good at their jobs. It was not that long ago that either through initial Ukrainian frontline mismanagement or a cleverly devised trap, Russian troops burst north as they were otherwise forming another one of those cauldrons around Pokrovsk. The rapid response units flanked the base of the salient, cut off the tip of it, and slowly eliminated the Russians that were inside. Well, it appears that Ukraine successfully executed a variant of this strategy, sending the 2nd National Guard Corps to outflank Russia. And the mission has worked, insofar as most of Kupiansk remains in Ukraine's hands. Russia was driven back north, and there was enough control over the front for Zelensky to visit the city. The victory put roughly a couple of dozen square kilometers back into Ukraine's column, though notably this is a small portion of what Russia's recent advances look like overall. Moreover, the pushback in Kupiansk does not guarantee that Ukraine will hold it forever. Pockets of Russian fighters remain in the city. Ukraine is constantly dealing with manpower shortages. Relying on firefighter injections to save everything is unsustainable. It does make you wonder, though, what this war would look like for Ukraine if the fall of the Soviet Union had not left a gaping hole in Ukrainian demographics. Russia, of course, also has that gaping hole, but at least Ukraine appears to be better utilizing the resources allotted to it. The upshot for Ukraine, if you can call it one, is that the logistics hub known as Kupiansk, with a pre-war population of 27,000, has been no such thing for a long time. I do not understand why this happens with every city that Ukraine loses, but the fall of these logistical hubs are always portrayed as causing massive domino problems that will doom the next layer of cities. Yet, in each of these cases, the utility of the logistical hub disappears well before Russia captures it. In other words, Ukraine has already internalized the logistical knock-on consequences of losing Kupiansk. The consequences are not good, but they are not massive. Rather, losing such a city is bad because it is defendable territory that Ukraine no longer controls, and that part does endanger the next city in the line. What makes Kupiansk unique from other logistical hubs is that it is on the other side of the Oskol River, and that does represent a domino problem. Yes, Russia has established another beachhead north of Kupiansk, but rivers anywhere are defendable geographic features. Permitting a breach allows for Russia to use the newly occupied territory as a base to expand further. And that is why it is fair to describe Kupiansk as a key city along the front line. Zooming out, it is unclear whether Russia will hold Kupiansk in the long term, even if Russia does capture it. Right now, negotiations are centered around Russia taking more of the Donbass and exchanging land from outside of the 4 eastern oblasts to make that more politically palatable in Kyiv. But that does not make Kupiansk any less important than, say, Pokrovsk. If the land is interchangeable to some degree, then it needs to be protected all the same. Meanwhile, what is not interchangeable are my books about the war. One focuses more on the lines on maps. The other is a broader political science look at the first year plus of the conflict. Check the video description for more information about them. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Take care.